skills that I think are most valuable are the skills that my organization is focused on for the last 20 years, and those are what we call the 4 C's: creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and communication. I think a lot about what a good teacher is in the modern world, and there's several things. They have those skills that we talked about earlier: creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and communication. They're also a learner for life. We talk about that we want students to learn forever, lifelong learners. We want teachers to be lifelong learners, and we want them to learn together with their students. The other thing that's really important for a teacher nowadays, no matter what country they're in, is that they're able to create a culture in their classroom. Because if we want students to have these skills, or we want students to be entrepreneurs, or to be innovative, or to experience the world, the teacher has to create an environment, a culture in the classroom, so that those skills can be brought out. So I've worked with teachers all over the world, tens of thousands of them, and some of them are exciting and dramatic and charismatic. And I think what do they have in common? They tend to have a really good sense of humor. They tend to be able to relate well with students. They tend to be really good communicators. They tend to be able to create a culture in the classrooms where students feel very comfortable. I was a classroom teacher for 10 years, so I began in a classroom in Los Angeles where I taught 6th graders, which is 11 and 12 years old. Then I taught in San Francisco, and that's with students who were 16 or 17 years old. And one of my key beliefs was that I, as a teacher, had to develop a good relationship with students. And there's several things that go into a good relationship. One of them is I have to be open and transparent with a student. When a student does well, I have to compliment them. When a student needs emotional support, I have to provide emotional support. When a student makes mistakes, or I have to be somebody who provides discipline, I have to be able to do that. But in all these things in that relationship, I have to be fair. I can't treat every student differently. If somebody is taller, shorter, doesn't speak English as well, struggles with communication, if I make a rule or make a relationship, I have to treat every single student in my classroom the same. So another thing that I think a lot about is my experience in becoming a teacher. I was formerly a journalist, and I had a very successful career in journalism. And then when I became a classroom teacher, I went back to university to get a license to become a teacher. And then upon graduation, I entered a classroom, and there was virtually nothing at the university that prepared me for what life would be like as a classroom teacher on a daily basis. I struggled completely, and like almost every teacher in the United States, I decided to quit in my first year of teaching. And I had mentors who said, no, it will get better. Year 2 was significantly better. Year 3 was significantly better. The teachers really don't develop expertise in their craft for about 5 years, and they truly don't become experts for about 10 years. Unfortunately, the data shows that teachers in the U.S. in particular, about 50% leave the field after 3 years. So they never develop the expertise that's going to allow them to develop comfort. I think the greatest change that's going to affect that process and speed up that process is technology. The other change that's going to occur is the fact that teachers used to work in isolation. I never spoke to any other adult during the day. I only spoke to children. Now there's a strategy called professional learning communities, where teachers meet together to discuss their practice, to improve, to share resources. Technology enables that because now we're in international communities. So if I have a problem with discipline or instruction or pedagogy or history, I can go online and I can watch videos of other teachers. I can go into chat rooms or discussion boards with other teachers and say, hey, I have this problem. That never occurred in the past. So I would imagine that over time, research is going to show that technology has accelerated the expertise level of teachers. My true expertise is in a field called project-based learning. It's a pedagogical style. Some people call it inquiry-based learning, challenge-based learning, problem-based learning. But the organization I used to direct, the Buck Institute for Education, is the global leader, and we called it project-based learning. The key elements of project-based learning is an inquiry over time, and the students engage in an authentic project. I'll give you an example. Where I live in California, there are many migrant farm workers who come into the valley that I live in to pick grapes for the wine industry, and then they leave. The working conditions for these people are horrible. So I was a history teacher. I'm teaching U.S. history. I have to teach about labor movements in the 1930s, what the U.S. calls the Great Depression. It's just a book to my students, but then I assign a project where they have to go out into the field, into the farms, into the hospitals, and interview the migrant workers of the modern day. And then they read the textbook and they realize what happened in the ancient past, the 1930s, to them is occurring in their own community today, and it makes the history come alive. So project-based learning or inquiry-based learning is a way to take the past, the important ideas of a discipline like math or science or history, and make it come alive by attaching it to something that occurs in the modern world. One of the best ways that project-based learning influences creativity is that in traditional instruction, the teacher would lecture or ask students to read a book, and then students write an essay or a paper and then take a test, and there's no creativity involved in that at all. In project-based learning, what is more likely to occur is the students will engage in a project like the project in history that I described, and then they're given freedom to express their understanding. So if students can write a paper to explain how they understand a concept or an idea, that's okay. If they write a play or a poem or a short story, or they want to create a website, or they want to do an interpretive dance, or write music, or draw posters, it doesn't really matter how a student expresses their knowledge, but project-based learning gives them the creative option to say, hey, I like this thing, and this is how I'm going to show you, the teacher in the world, that I understand. One of the biggest misunderstandings about project-based learning is that if you're doing it well, you can't lecture, you can't use tests, you don't read textbooks, and nothing could be farther from the truth. The idea of a project is that the students are engaging in an authentic activity over a period of weeks, and within that, students still need to know math and science and history. So I, as a project-based learning teacher all day long, once a week I would provide a lecture, and I would have the students read the textbook, and every Friday I would have my students take an exam, an individual exam. So you take these traditional activities of instruction, but the project provides a context. The problem with most traditional instruction is students are told, read this book, and they don't know why they're reading the book. Listen to my lecture, but they don't know why they're listening to the lecture. And take this test because I told you to take this test. The project gives the students an understanding of why they need to know the information.